one of the things I was telling my doctor, and I said, this is really scary. Like prior to this, honestly, I had never heard of gastroparesis. Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Shelly and I am so glad that you are here. So make sure that you like and subscribe and do all the things because you never know when I'm gonna upload next. Today's video is a little bit more of a personal one than I usually do. You know, I like my unboxings, I like my hauls, I like travel, that sort of thing. But today we're gonna talk some medical stuff. So recently I have just been diagnosed with a stomach disorder called gastroparesis. Gastro meaning stomach, paresis meaning paralyzed. So part of my stomach is paralyzed. It results in like delayed gastric emptying. Editing Shelly here. So I realized I didn't do a really good job of kind of explaining what gastroparesis is and how it affects things. So you need to know a little bit about the digestive system. So I'm going to give you a quick lesson. I wish I had little like diagrams and things for you, but I don't know how to make those. So you're just going to have to listen. And this is a very rudimentary explanation of the digestive system. So it's actually much more complicated. So this is like kindergarten level explanation. So you chew your food, you eat your food, you swallow your food. The tube that it goes down is called your esophagus. Your esophagus leads into your stomach, and there's a sphincter at the top that prevents your contents from coming back up. Your stomach, once your food is in there, it mixes with the gastric juices that are in there and then the muscle contractions that churn it, and they turn it into a substance called chyme. And I read that that's kind of like a paste. And then that is released, the lower abdominal sphincter opens and that's released into your small intestine, parts of the parts of your small intestine that I can't pronounce. And it's mixed with juices from your pancreas, from your liver, your intestine, and the nutrients are absorbed in the small intestine, and then it keeps going through your small intestine, and waste products are discarded into your large intestine where it absorbs the water, and solid food and undigestible things comes out. We won't talk about that. But that's how digestion works. So the vomiting has been my main downfall, my main symptom. I've missed a lot of work this year, like a lot of school. There used to be years that I would only miss for doctor's appointments, but when you are throwing up every 2 to 3 weeks, I can't. Some days I will make it to school and then I'm like, I have to go home. I just can't. So yeah, so it's really impacted my life lately or this past year. Another thing too, I've realized like I'm okay with food in the morning and lunch. If I eat dinner, I feel I should have put 2 and 2 together, but like I eat dinner, even like gluten-free dinner, and my stomach spasms so much and I'm in so much pain. I'm literally like sitting on the couch rocking back and forth. I've noticed for me, if I eat smaller meals more frequently, I do a little bit better. And if I eat heavier in the morning and lunch and then lighter in the evening, that's working so far. So I don't know if I'm gonna have to go to like a dietitian or what. I know there's a few medicines, not very many, that you can take, and I don't think any of them can be taken long term. So it's a lot of adjustment and just a lot of unknowns right now. I was hunting for things on YouTube and TikTok like, what is this disorder? What? The things were very scary. There were a lot of feeding tubes. And I'm not unfamiliar with them. My mom, due to cancer at the end of life, had to get a feeding tube. I'm a special education teacher, so I've had students with feeding tubes. But I was like, oh, this little stomach issue can lead to a feeding tube. So I just kind of want to make this video for maybe people who just got diagnosed so that something out there isn't so scary. So let me tell you a little bit about about my story. I've battled stomach issues my whole entire life. I remember being in 3rd grade when the coal mines in my area closed down, and my dad was a coal miner along with pretty much everyone else's dad and uncle and grandfather I knew. The coal mines closed, and of course that created such an economic hardship for my family and then just our whole area in particular. And my stomach would get so upset I would go home a lot from school. I would just constantly be sick. I've always had a nervous stomach. I was involved in like drama, theater in high school, and before performance, I would be running to the bathroom because I just have a nervous stomach. I was about 22, 23, somewhere in that range post-college. I got diagnosed with IBS, which is irritable bowel syndrome, and that usually has 3 main types. There's primarily diarrhea, primarily constipation, or alternating, okay? And then I also battled GERD, which is gastroesophageal reflux disease, acid reflux. I've had that since I was little, and I've been on a PPI, which is a proton pump inhibitor, 20 plus or more years, probably even longer than that. So, and then that led to when you have acid like coming up all the time, it can eat away at your esophagus, and it's called Barrett's esophagus, and it's like a pre-cancerous condition. So those are my main ones, my main issues. And I've had a lot of, you have to have scopes, endoscopies, where they put you to sleep and they stick a camera down your throat and into your stomach and into your parts of your small intestine. I don't know if it's the duodenum, I don't know how you pronounce that. But it starts with a D. So it goes down there and it, you know, they look and see. So I've had issues with, as I said, acid reflux. It ate away parts of my esophagus. Those have now healed, which is, thank goodness. So the last 2 scopes I've had, I've not had any signs of the Barrett's esophagus. About 9 years ago, I was still having some major stomach issues. So I mentioned it to my GI doctor, and he said, oh, that could possibly be a symptom of celiac disease. And so I looked up celiac disease, and then I was like, oh, that fits. And like, to be diagnosed with celiac, they usually do blood work, and if that blood work is positive, then you have to go in for a scope, and they take biopsies of your small intestine. So after that, we tried an elimination diet called FODMAPs, and I can't remember for the life of me what it stands for, but I'll put it here. It's basically different substances in food that can cause reactions in people. In celiac disease, it is an autoimmune disease where the body attacks the gluten, which is protein found in wheat, barley, and rye, and the only treatment for that is a strict gluten-free diet. So I technically don't have a celiac diagnosis, but I've had the genetic testing. I have relatives with it. So, and I actually thought my mom had it. My mom used to get so sick after she'd eat biscuits, and I'd tell her to stop eating biscuits, but moms, what do you do? So that's been my battle with that for the last 9 years. I have a good handle on gluten-free. If I should get gluten, it's usually from cross-contamination. I follow like the same pattern. I know when I get gluten versus it's something else. So that kind of brings us to where we are now. I've had recurrent vomiting. This has been an on and off thing for the past few years, but this past year especially, it's gotten worse. It's gotten to the point where the recurrent vomiting is almost like clockwork, 2 to 3 weeks without fail. And it follows a similar pattern. I wake up in the morning and I'm like, oh, that's not good. That's not good. I don't feel good. And then sometimes it goes away and I feel fine. And sometimes I puke once and I'm fine. And then sometimes it lasts projectile for hours and hours and hours. I have prescription medicines. We've done all the things. I actually thought that I was convinced that it was either stress, because teaching in a pandemic, and 6th graders, I love ya, but 6 grades hard. So I thought it was like stress or anxiety, because I have a lot of health related anxiety, and I'm aware of that. I'm aware, I deal with it, but thought it was something like that. Or I actually thought the symptoms matched to a peptic ulcer, because I would just feel like indigestion, like a sour stomach. I would burp up, like either I burp up like egg taste, that sulfur taste, which is so gross, or I'd burp up like a vomit taste. Not regurgitating anything, but just burp up the taste. And I know if I get one of those, either one of those, if I'm burping that, I know that I'm gonna throw up within 24 hours. It's usually a giant sign for me. And I just feel sometimes like my food sits here when I eat and it just won't go down. So I was probably doing the 2 worst things that I could do. I would drink a Sprite, because I was like, well, maybe I'm just low on acid, despite the fact that I take medicine for acid reflux for too much acid. I thought I would drink Sprite to maybe like break apart the food and push it down, which I still think is a valid thing, but I don't know. Or I would be like, all right, I need to eat more food to push it down, the food down, and make it digest. So, I mean, I was Googling all kinds of things. I'm a Googler. I like to know. I read my medical journals, and then they scheduled me for another scope, another endoscopy, just because I have to have them done every 3 years. We keep an eye on the Barrett's, and thank the good Lord, haven't had any sign of that in the last 2 scopes. And you had to fast for this one. So by the time I ate dinner the night before, and then it was 12 hours later, I went in for my scope, and this time I had a MAC anesthesia, which is managed anesthesia care. Oddly enough, I had a bad reaction to the sedation drugs the last time, and we couldn't even do the scope. I was supposed to have a scope and a colonoscopy, and as soon as they hit me with the medications, they're called twilight meds that put you to sleep, I had a really bad reaction. My heart went to a dangerous rhythm. I had cardiology got paged to the endoscopy room, and I got a cardiologist in a year of every heart test known to man, I think. So, but my heart's in good shape now, and we decided to try different medicines this round to put me to sleep. And it was a lovely experience. It was a dream. So hands down, that is the way to go for me. But my doctor came out as soon as I got out of the anesthesia. He came and talked to me, and he was like, first thing he said to me, because one of those things, again, health anxiety, I was worried about cancer, just because a lot of the GI symptoms, they match, you know, those symptoms match a lot of different things, and one of them was cancer. So he told me, all right, no cancer, no ulcers, and I thought for sure I had an ulcer, and it was no something else. And he goes, did you eat this morning? And I was like, no, I haven't. I fasted. I haven't had anything except the small sip of water to take my my heart medicine with. And he goes, you still have food in your stomach. Guys, at that point it was 12 hours. Your digestive system usually empties itself. Your stomach empties into your small intestine. Most people within 4 hours. So I was at 12 hours and I still had food in my stomach. So that wasn't good. And so then he said, you most likely have gastroparesis, but we're gonna do a gastric emptying scan to confirm. And so that's where we are today. So we go for a gastric emptying scan, and that is where I will eat radioactive food. I think it's gonna be radioactive eggs and toast, and hopefully gluten-free toast. I'm gonna bring my own toast just to be on the safe side, but I will eat that, and then every hour for 4 hours, they will take I think it's an x-ray of my stomach to see how much of that food is remaining. Because after 4 hours, you should have, a normal person with normal stomach emptying should have less than 10% left after 4 hours. So I shut the camera off, but I forgot to mention a couple things. So I did have all these biopsies taken. Biopsies came back normal, no infections. One of the things I was concerned about was H. pylori, which is one of the causes of ulcers. I have had that before, so I've had an ulcer before, so that's what I was really thinking. Nothing else major, so. All right, I am here at the hospital. It is 6:30 in the morning. So I'm getting ready to do the gastric emptying study. So let's put my mask on and go see how it goes. It is many hours later and I finished the gastric emptying study. I was right, I was served the normal food. I had scrambled eggs in a little cup. Everyone like online kept saying they were like awful tasting. They were just like regular scrambled eggs. I did zhuzh them up with some salt, so there you go. Even though I've told everyone under the sun, I'm like, I'm gluten-free, I'm gluten-free, I'm gluten-free. Did they have gluten-free bread for me? No, they didn't. They had wheat. So luckily I brought my own gluten-free bread. It wasn't toasted, it was just bread. And if you have gluten-free bread, it's not good, but it is what it is. And then they had like jelly and butter for me, so I tried to doctor my bread up as much as I could. And then I had to stand, it was like an x-ray machine, but I'm vlogging in a parking lot. It's like an x-ray machine, kind of looks like a CT/x-ray machine, but it detects the radioactive tracer that they put in the eggs. So I ate all the eggs and I ate one piece of the bread and I just couldn't get the other piece down. And they gave you 6 ounces of water. So that's all I've been allowed to have for the last, 6 hours. So I'm very dehydrated. I downed this entire bottle of water and I'm gonna go get another one and some Starbucks. This wasn't enough caffeine either. So I'm like, I got that caffeine withdrawal headache going. But I had to get the scans. They took a scan immediately after I finished eating. Then I had another scan at 1 hour, a scan at 2 hours, and then another scan at 4 hours. So for the 1 hour and the 2 hour, they made me stay in like the little waiting area of the nuclear medicine area. And then for the 4 hours, they let me I could have run errands if I wanted, but parking is hard to come by at the hospital. So I wandered down to the cafeteria and graded papers. All right, caffeine and water. Those are my priorities. So it's been around a week since my gastric emptying study. My results actually came back that night. I do have gastroparesis. I had about double the amount that you're supposed to have, a normal person has after the 4 hour mark. My 1 hour and my 2 hour mark scans looked okay. The 2 hour was right at that border, but the 4 hour definitely have some gastric emptying, and that is what is causing me to be sick. So the trouble that I have is that I eat and it sits in my stomach. My stomach doesn't do the churny part when it's supposed to, and that food sits there and ferments and causes bacteria, and that makes me nauseous or vomit, and sometimes it causes bloating and among other things. So I've spoken with my doctor and we have a plan. So I'm going to attempt dietary modifications. He gave me a few choices and I chose a conservative approach, and I really like a doctor that lays out the different options, the different risks and the different things, and kind of lets you choose. And he agreed with me that a conservative approach was probably good this first time. So I'm going to make some dietary modifications, and those are, I have to follow a low fiber, low fat diet and like small portions, small meals. And I've been doing that for a few weeks, and I've been okay-ish with that so far. And then I'm gonna follow up in 3 months. So one of the options that I have is to take a medication called Reglan. It has some side effects with it, and it's like I think a short-term medicine you only take for less than 12 weeks. But one of the rare side effects, but it's kind of scary, is called tardive dyskinesia, and that is like involuntary tremors of the tongue, face, lips, and extremities, and that is not something I want. So I am not going to take that unless it becomes absolutely necessary to take that. But that medicine is supposed to like help the muscles in your stomach contract and push food into the small intestine where it keeps doing its thing. Me and the digestive system. So that's kind of where we are right now. One of the things I was telling my doctor, and I said, this is really scary. Like prior to this, honestly, I had never heard of gastroparesis. I don't know, I do now, but at the time I didn't know a single other person with it. I've never heard of this disorder before. And so it's just kind of scary. So I went on an internet hunt. I Googled things, I looked at YouTube, I looked at TikTok. I am a person, I like to know every single thing about it to just kind of know what I'm dealing with. And it was just frightening, the stuff, the amount of feeding tubes that I saw. And you know, Lord willing that I never have to have one, but if you do, you do. You know, you gotta do what you have to do. I see a lot of gastroparesis patients in my practice, and I can't remember the last time that I've put in a feeding tube due to gastroparesis. So that actually made me feel a lot better. But I have a lot of learning to do. So it's a curve. So I bought some things, some resources off Amazon. I'm gonna show you what those are. Maybe you are newly diagnosed too, and this could be potentially helpful to you. So this is one that I found. It's called Living Well with Gastroparesis, and it's answers, advice, tips, and recipes for a healthier, happier life. And it's by Crystal Zaborsky, Saltrelli, CHC. This author actually has a YouTube channel too, and I found that to be helpful. So she's not one of the scary ones, just I like some good advice. And then another one I found was the Gastroparesis Cookbook. And believe it or not, I actually made this recipe last night. I made the sea scallops and the zucchini noodles. This too, because I am a gluten-free gastroparesis patient. A lot of the recipes in here, they're marked. Like if you can see at the top of that, it says gluten-free. It'll let you know if it's low carb, low sugar, if it's SIBO friendly, if it's GERD friendly, if any of those things apply to you. It'll even label it in here, I think, if it's like low FODMAP. You know, if you are a GI patient, you probably know what most of these things are. If you are not, sorry. So if it's vegan, if it's dairy free, whatever it is. Another thing that I bought was a Gastroparesis Journal. So in this, you can track your food, track your water, and then see if you have any triggers and reactions. Just from my limited research, you need to kind of know like what foods are like safe foods for you, and then what foods are like not safe foods that are gonna cause you symptoms. So you can track it and like see how you feel. So we're gonna do that. So in talking with my doctor too, you know, we went through my medication list, and because sometimes medications can cause gastroparesis, and I am not on any that should cause that. You're very noisy. So, and then my doctor and I were discussing like the why. Why do I have this? Like what is the cause? And most of the time you have no idea. No idea what's the cause. A chunk of people, and I think I read a statistic like 26%, that might be wrong, but like, we'll say that. If I'm wrong, I'll fix it. So like 26% of people are diabetic. I, to my knowledge, am not diabetic. And even, he said, even if I was, usually this is a condition you've seen in people who've been diabetic for years. So that doesn't apply to me. Other people that I've seen potentially have this are people with like Ehlers-Danlos syndrome or POTS syndrome. None of those apply to me. Idiopathic is the most common one, and that just literally means we have no idea, no clue what caused it. And another option potentially is virus, that at some point I have contracted a virus, maybe COVID. I don't know. I've never had COVID that I know of. I'm triple vaccinated, but maybe that could have potentially caused this. But I do think I've probably been dealing with this based on the symptoms, at least 5 years. I'd say at least 5 years. Just not as intensely as in the past year. But it's nice to have an answer, no matter what. It's nice to have an answer as to why this is happening. So thank you for coming along on this gastroparesis journey with me. it came out of left field. I feel, there was the one day at an appointment I mentioned to my GI doctor's physician assistant that I usually see. I said, I just feel like my food doesn't go down. Like I eat and it just sits here. And at that point in time, I started, because I started Googling what that was. And gastroparesis was one of the things that popped up. But I never heard of it before then. And then after the scope, where I still had food left in my stomach after 12 hours, I started heavily researching, and I kind of had a feeling at that point that was the direction we were headed. So thanks for being here with me on this journey. And if you have gastroparesis and you have any good resources or anything that's helped you, let me know below, because I appreciate, I appreciate all the help. I do. And yeah, so, but thank you anyway for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.